everybody. Welcome to this Spaces with AFA Action. I'm Walker Wildman, and we're going to have Dr. Jameson Taylor joining us shortly. And today we're going to talk about this one big beautiful bill. And that's what President Trump is calling it, and that's what the House of Representatives actually branded the bill in the text. So we're going to be breaking it down, what needs to happen to the bill, in order for it to cross the finish line and to satisfy a lot of the concerns that conservatives in the House and the Senate have with the legislation as it stands today. Jameson, welcome to the program.
Good morning. How you doing, Walker?
How you doing? Well, Jameson. Let's start breaking this down. We've got about 25 minutes where we can talk about this legislation and maybe some of the provisions that need to be altered in order to make it better, if you will. The first thing is that this is primarily a renewal or an extension, a permanency of the tax cuts from 2017. There's broad support for that in Congress, both in the House and the Senate, and that's not really being debated as far as whether or not to extend those tax cuts. So that's basically a non-controversial provision. The border security funding, over 50 billion in border security funding, is also has broad support. I know Senator Rand Paul has talked about possibly reducing the amount of money spent on the border, but either way, that's a pretty good area that Congress agrees on, at least in the Republican side. But then we get into things like Medicaid and some of the other provisions that this legislation is able to alter, and that's where a lot of the debate is around at this point. So kind of bring us up to speed on your viewpoint here.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on this week in Washington, D.C. related to the one big, beautiful bill, the genius way that Trump has branded the bill. In particular, there are negotiations happening today, Wednesday, June 11th, in the U.S. Senate over the bill. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of conversations. You're also seeing a lot of pushback from Democrats and from the media. That said, there are a couple things that people need to know about this budget. And the most important thing to know is that this is a 1,000% Republican budget. The way that they're looking to pass this budget, it's a special process. It's called reconciliation. And that means that they don't need any Democrat votes in either the US House or the Senate to actually pass this package. So it also means there are certain restrictions on what they can do. But at the end of the day, Republicans completely own this budget. And that means that whatever is good in the bill, and some of the good things are defunding $1 billion big box abortion providers, finally building a real wall so that we can have safer communities, taking fraudsters off of welfare, civil service reforms that will make federal employees do their actual jobs as opposed to being political and obstructing things. Republicans are responsible for this because, again, it's their bill. Now, whatever's bad in the bill, it's not Democrats really that are to blame. It's Republicans. And what we're seeing right now are negotiations between Republicans. Now, some of the things that are bad in the bill, it increases the debt by 4 or 5 trillion. That's bad. There's failure to reprioritize Medicaid funding to help disabled kids. You're hearing the left talk about Medicaid cuts, and we can talk about that later. They're not cutting Medicaid at all. They're reforming Medicaid. But one thing they need to do is to funnel more resources to disabled kids instead of giving this money to able-bodied adults who are not working. Another thing, another sticking point right now is food stamp reform. The Biden administration illegally expanded the food stamp program. It's been a massive drain on the country. It's encouraged people not to work. It's encouraged welfare fraud. And so the Trump administration is trying to reform the food stamp program by giving states more buy-in. We're seeing Republicans push back against that. Democrats, of course, we expect that, but we're seeing Republican governors who are saying, we don't really want to pay for the food stamp program. We don't want to make the reforms that we need to make. So again, that just gets us to the point that this is a Republican budget, and a lot of the negotiations we're seeing are between Republicans. The second thing that people need to know about the bill is, it's called the One Big Beautiful Bill. And that means this is it. This is the priority for Congress right now. This bill, whatever's in it, it's gonna prove or disprove. It's gonna show whether Republicans can actually come together and govern. And we've seen when the Democrats have been in charge, they have actually done big things. They have done huge, ugly bills instead of big, beautiful bills. But they've done things like Green New Deal. They've done things like Biden's infrastructure package that basically started this rampant inflation. They've done things like Obamacare. The question is, are Republicans going to do important things with this bill? Are they finally, we talked about, are they finally going to have border security? Are they going to finally reform some of these welfare programs? So the stakes are really high for the Republicans. Now, as I look at it, we're talking about some of the sticking points with the bill, some of the things being negotiated. One of those things right now is called the SALT tax, and I'm sure your listeners have heard about what the SALT tax is.
Yeah,
Uh,
state and local tax deduction.
yeah, state and local tax deductions. It primarily benefits uh, wealthy earners in states like New York and California. These are states that have really high state and local taxes, and the federal government has bailed these communities out, these states out, by basically subsidizing their high taxes. Now, I don't know about you, but being here in Mississippi, I have no interest in subsidizing millionaires in New York and California who are choosing to live there, who are choosing to pay high taxes for bad government services. I have no interest in bailing them out. But we saw Mike Johnson in the House gave his members really a sweetheart deal on the SALT tax. Basically, they increased the amount that people could deduct from 10,000 to 40,000. That's a huge increase, huge increase. And that has really increased the price tag of the big beautiful bill. And so that's a point that's being negotiated today in the Senate. What is the Senate going to do about the SALT tax bailout? And my
Yeah.
advice to the US senators is eliminate it. I don't think we should have any SALT tax bailout at all, but certainly not four times larger than what we initially had. So that's something. Contact your congressman about, contact your US senators about, and tell them, hey, we don't want to bail out New York, California, Illinois, these other states that choose to have high taxes. We don't
Yeah.
want to bail these people out. But if you're Mike Johnson or if you're John Thune, what do you need to do? You need to do what Nancy Pelosi would have done, which is to bring these members into your office and say, hey, I know this is going to be a tough vote for you. I know that maybe you have some folks, let's say congressman from New York, you have some folks in your community that really want this SALT tax bailout. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to take one for the team. We can't include this in the budget. The cost is too high. We're going to have to take this SALT tax bailout. We're going to have to take it out. And
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi would have said, and you're going to vote yes on this, because if you don't vote yes, you will never get another project for your district. You'll be stripped of your committee chairs. You're going to be put up at the bottom of the list for anything good that's happening in the House. That conversation would have occurred because the Democrats took the hard votes. They did the things that they wanted to do. They accomplished a lot of their priorities. So again, the question comes down to, are Republicans willing to do that in his Republican leadership? And right now, all eyes are on John Thune. Is John Thune willing to make his members take a hard vote and pass a good bill here? So that's the second thing to watch with this budget. And then, the third thing is, to me, none of this is actually that hard. It's really a no-brainer because, you talked about the tax cuts in the bill, that this is not controversial. Well, I kind of want to flip it because it is controversial in this sense. We're actually not talking about tax cuts, and people need to realize that. We are talking about whether the Trump tax cuts will expire. So what we're talking about are tax increases. So listeners, do you want your taxes to go up in order to bail out millionaires in New York and California? For me, the answer is no. Do I want my taxes to go up to pay for more Medicaid fraud? The answer is no. Do I want my taxes to go up to pay for people that are on Medicaid and don't want to work? The answer to me is clearly no. The things in this bill, to me, they're really no brainers. So, yeah, you're going to have some members say, no, come on, Mike. Come on, John. You can't make me take this hard vote. Let's look at what's in the bill. These are not actually hard votes. We're
Yeah.
talking about border security. And again, not talking about tax cuts. We're talking about whether or not taxes are going to increase and increase by a lot. So,
Yeah.
and that gets us down to the cost of the bill. You have some members like Rand Paul and Ron Johnson in Wisconsin. They have rightfully so said, look, we think this just costs too much. We need to look for some cuts.
Yeah. The cuts aren't aggressive enough, basically.
Yeah, they aren't aggressive enough. But if we look at U.S. spending, there are 5 areas that make up 75% of U.S. spending. So first, Social Security. Well, politically, Congress is not cutting Social Security. 2, Medicare. Congress is not cutting Medicare. People have already paid into Medicare and Social Security. So, they feel like they have a right to it. They're not cutting Medicare. 3, military spending, veterans benefits. Congress is not going to cut military spending and veterans benefits. 4, interest on the national debt. Well, we have to pay that. It's mandatory. We have, if we don't pay it, we're going to default on our loans. So that leaves one bucket left, and that's Medicaid and Obamacare. This is really the only thing that Congress can cut, and kind of more generally, the only thing that they can cut significantly that's going to lead to significant savings is welfare, really the welfare industrial complex, so to speak. Now, if you cut welfare, what are you really doing? What's really in this bill? Well, we talked about they're not really making Medicaid cuts. They're making Medicaid reforms. And so what are the reforms that they are looking to make? First, a work requirement for able-bodied adults without kids that are on Medicaid. Now, I support this because, one, it is the right thing to do. We should encourage people that are able-bodied that don't have kids to get a job. It's good for them. And what we're going to see is, maybe, and we've done studies on this. Maybe the first 6 months they're working at a gas station making minimum wage. But a year later, you're going to find these people are getting good jobs. They've turned their lives around. They're making $80,000 a year. I mean, this is incredible. People choosing to languish on welfare, choosing to languish on Medicaid. And if you just give them some encouragement, like a Medicaid work requirement, they will turn their lives around. I've seen this again. There are lots of studies on this that show this. Also, though, as the White House pointed out yesterday, Medicaid work requirements poll very well. People support welfare to work. People recognize that it's a tragedy for someone to be stuck on welfare for year after year after year, generation after generation. So we're talking about, again, a no-brainer here, Medicaid work requirements. Where's the other savings going to come with Medicaid? Cutting fraud. You have Medicaid has been flagged year after year by the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, as a high fraud, high risk program. There's a ton of fraud and waste in Medicaid. And in fact, if you run the numbers, they could probably save $2 trillion a year, $2 trillion over 10 years, rather. $2 trillion over 10 years if they would just address the fraud, cut some of the fraud. And that gets us really close to paying for the Trump tax cuts. So the price tag of the bill is going to be much better if we can go after Medicaid fraud. Now, part of this fraud has to do with illegal aliens. So when you're hearing the left, you're hearing the media say, 5 million people are going to lose Medicaid coverage. They are deceiving you. They're being very deceptive because the Biden administration illegally expanded Medicaid by allowing illegal aliens to come onto the program. They're not supposed to be on the program. They are not actually eligible. But the Biden administration made it very difficult for states to check Medicaid eligibility for illegal aliens. And so what the big beautiful bill is doing is bringing back some of these safeguards so that we can get fraudsters and illegal aliens off of the program. And I just want to, as an aside, uh, hope people don't take this the wrong way, but a lot of times we hear apologies from the Chamber of Commerce or whoever it may be, saying, "Well, hey, we have to allow illegal immigration. We have to because illegal aliens do the jobs that Americans won't do." Well, guess what? When illegal aliens get on taxpayer subsidized Medicaid, they get on food stamps, they get on welfare, they are not doing the jobs that Americans won't do. They're not doing any jobs. They're sitting on the couch, smoking
Correct.
weed, just like the other folks that are not working on welfare. So when we look at these cuts, quote unquote cuts, and again, they're not cuts, they're reforms. When we look at these reforms to Medicaid and food stamps, this is not hard. The left is acting like it's hard, but this is not hard, and Republicans need to get with the game and pass the one big beautiful bill as soon as they can.
Jameson, I want to talk about the deficit spending, the deficit and the deficit spending, basically printing money to pay all of our bills, money that exceeds our revenue from a government perspective. This is this is a really important aspect that Ron Johnson and others are pointing out that that the Trump administration could be way more aggressive here on the deficit reduction over the next 10 years. And remember, a lot of these projections that the White House is putting out is based on a 10-year model, and it assumes that Republicans are in control for 10 years, and that no Democrat comes in and hikes back spending like Biden did. And so that's point number one. But the Trump administration has an opportunity to reduce deficit spending, which would in turn reduce inflation and bolster economic activity in the private sector by being more aggressive on the welfare reform and on the Obamacare reform or getting rid of Obamacare. And to your point, the Medicaid and Obamacare reform or abolishing, however you want to describe it, that's possible here is really non-controversial from a Republican vantage point because after all, one of the first things that Trump tried to do in his first term was abolish Obamacare, and John McCain was the lone vote that gave the thumbs down to getting rid and repealing Obamacare. All other Republicans were fully on board with getting rid of Obamacare, so that's non-controversial. And then the Medicaid reform and the work requirements, all of that is a key tenet of the Republican Party, and that is eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse in the entitlement programs. But back to the deficit spending. This bill over the course of 10 years, once again, this is best case scenario because it assumes that a Democrat doesn't come in and spend trillions more than's projected. But best case scenario, it reduces deficit spending by roughly $160 billion a year. So 1.6 billion over the course of 10 years. It reduces deficit spending. I think that there's enough cuts out there, Jameson, to where they can get that to 2 trillion over 10 years or 200 billion dollars a year. Does that seem unreasonable?
No, I mean, I think they need to be much more aggressive in looking for cuts, and hopefully the Senate is going to do that. I think it begins with the SALT tax bailout. If they can eliminate that bailout, they're going to save an awful lot of money.
Yeah.
Second thing they can do is accelerate the Medicaid work requirements. You have folks that don't support the work requirements, and it's just really baffling to me. I just as an aside, the studies have been done that show that when Republican voters get on welfare, guess what? They start voting Democrat. And then when they get off of welfare, they start voting Republican again. Welfare expansion, and this is why the left has focused on it relentlessly. Welfare expansion is a get out the vote drive for Democrats. Republicans need to get with the program and they need to realize that by supporting welfare fraud, by opposing work requirements for welfare programs, they're just empowering the Democrat Party. I mean, it's a completely self defeating strategy. So, yes, they need to be more aggressive in going after welfare fraud, cleaning up welfare programs, and a big part of that, those welfare programs is Obamacare. You see a lot of fraud on the exchanges. There's pushback right now from folks in states like California. There are some reforms in the One Big Beautiful Bill that would address some significant problems with the Obamacare exchanges, and you're seeing the left is opposing that. Well, again, why? Because when people get on welfare, they start voting Democrat. So a lot of these things are just very simple,
Yeah.
and I encourage people contact your governor, because you're seeing governors behind the scenes, governors of Republican states behind the scenes are pushing back on this welfare reform because their welfare departments have been captured by the bureaucracy. They don't really want to make changes. They don't
Yeah.
really want to go searching for fraud. And when we talk about fraud, we're talking about really low hanging fruit. Like, are the people on our Medicaid program, are they alive? Are they using fraudulently a dead person's social security number? Do these people actually live in our state? Do these people have $100,000 in bank accounts or $1 million? I mean, we see millionaires on welfare from time to time. We see lottery winners on welfare. The simple checks that every American would expect are being made. Like, is someone even remotely eligible for all this welfare that we're giving them? Those checks are not being made, and they're not being made in Republican states. So Republicans need to lead the way, and Republican governors need to lead the way on this. But yeah, the cuts, the savings is definitely there. And at the end of the day, I'd say if we're going to spend money on something, let's at least spend money on not increasing people's taxes, because that
Yeah.
way, that's less money going to the government, less money for the government to abuse and to waste. And we saw the waste that Elon Musk and Doge has uncovered. It's just, shocking. I think some of the numbers I saw were like people that are 300 years old collecting Social Security. I mean,
Right.
our country's not even 300 years old. So people just, it's really hard to comprehend the amount of fraud and incompetency going on at the federal level. And so the more we can starve that beast, less tax revenue, cutting the debt, the better.
Yeah, this bill, I would describe this bill, and this is the way the media always loves to describe the different budgets. But this is a must-pass bill. I mean, to your point, avoiding the tax hikes that's going to come in January if this bill doesn't pass, and then the full funding of the border wall. I mean, this is a big deal. I mean, when was the last time we thought we could get full funding of the entire border wall in one bill, only needing Republican votes? I mean, these are wish list items that in the last Trump term we were told were impossible. We can't do that. The rules don't allow it. And here we are near the finish line of getting this bill over the finish line. But the Senate is going to have to make some changes to the bill to satisfy these concerns. I mean, these are very viable concerns. They come the points we're making come straight out of the Republican Party platform, such as reforming or getting rid of Obamacare, Medicaid reform. All of these are Republican Party tenets that are in their platform that they speak to frequently. So this is non-controversial from a Republican perspective. And to your point earlier, all we need here is Republican votes. So it's not like we're having to cut a deal with Chuck Schumer. And I would also speak against this notion that we need to break this up into multiple bills. I think that's a bad idea, and I think we'll lose ground if we do that. Because if we don't get this package through the finish line, then Democrats are going to seize on the opportunity. And if President Trump has to cut a deal with Chuck Schumer to raise the debt ceiling, that's going to be bad news, because Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are going to demand more spending, and they're going to undermine the entire Trump agenda. And the last thing I'll note on the debt ceiling, folks, the debt ceiling is really a boogeyman, because the same people that authorize the debt ceiling are the same people that authorize the spending. All right, so it's as if the bank is increasing the credit card limit on the bank's credit card. All right, it's the same group of people. Congress passes spending bills and Congress authorizes a debt ceiling increase. So it's the same group of people doing both things. And so this notion that we need to have this big debate on the debt ceiling is really a distraction. We really need to be focusing on this reconciliation bill and cutting mandatory spending there. And then when you get over to the discretionary spending, they need to cut spending there. But all of the spending cuts have to happen in the spending bills. You can't cut spending through the debt ceiling negotiations. You can only cut spending through actual spending legislation. And so I want to point that out as well. We have to pay our bills as a country. We can't not increase the debt ceiling. The question is, are we going to reduce spending when it comes to negotiating these budgets, which is what this one big beautiful bill exactly has to do with. Jameson, if you had 2 minutes left, we got about 2 minutes left. Go ahead and wrap up as far as some action items for the Senate and the White House on this legislation.
Yes, I think people need to call their U.S. senators now. They need to call their governors now and tell them we want you to support the one big beautiful bill. We want you to support eliminating the SALT tax bailout. We want you to support strong reforms for Medicaid. This is must pass for the Republican Party because just as they failed to repeal Obamacare under Trump's first term, what happened? A lot of Republican voters didn't show up at the midterms. They lost faith because Republicans broke their promises. So this is the chance for Republicans to show that they can govern, and they have to get this done by July 4th. I think there's a sense in DC, the swampy people say, we're going to slow this down. They're not going to do this July 4th. We'll wait till Labor Day and then we'll push it to December. That's what happened with the first round of Trump tax cuts under his first term. We do not want these delays because it only serves the left. The Senate is not showing up to do their work. They're not pushing through any of the president's nominations. They're not approving the president's judges. The Senate needs to show up. And again, John Thune is the one that is accountable. He is the leader. He is the one
Yes.
deciding the schedule. So to say, let's hold John Thune accountable, hold Mike Johnson accountable, that he does his job. So far, he's done pretty good. But
Yeah.
hold your lawmakers, especially your U.S. senators and your governor, hold them accountable because they are responsible for what's in this, and the Republicans need to get it done.
That's right. Yep. Senator Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, and Mike Johnson need to get Congress back into D.C. and they need to work 5 days a week, just like the rest of the country, in order to get this agenda through. That includes President Trump's nominees and this legislation, get it through the finish line by July. They could actually do both. They could get all of President Trump's pending nominees voted on and get this bill through the finish line over the next 4 weeks if they choose to. So it's completely up to them. Thanks, Jameson. Appreciate you joining us today.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.